Hello, Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic. Kevin here to bring you another 53-man roster projection here for the Falcons as we get into the third and final week of the preseason. This may end up being the final one because, as we saw against the Ravens, Falcons don't seem to be interested in playing sort of any second stringers or anything like that. So that suggests that they may have those spots more or less decided at this point. So there may be a few of those spots that maybe get jumbled up. But for the most part, I think we have a good handle on almost all of the roster spots on this team, given the Falcons' decision to not play like 40 players basically against the Ravens, and doesn't sound like they're good planning to play them against the Jaguars here in preseason week 3. So that makes our job a little bit easier in terms of predictions. We'll see how much ends up changing, but no matter what, we've had a lot of changes obviously since the pre-training camp roster projection, which was the last one I did. So lots to talk about there. Obviously, we have the two huge additions to the defense that came in last week. We've had some unfortunate injuries as well. Never like to see those, obviously, but it's part of football. The team's got to be able to get a handle on it and get past it, and that's what we're going to look at working on here with this 53-man roster. So thank you guys very much for tuning in. For today's show, like I said, we're going to be breaking down the 53-man roster, and I'm going to give you a practice squad for the first time. I know there's some roster sickos out there that are just really jonesing for that practice squad projection, so we got that today as well. Not going to spend a ton of time talking about that, but I will list it off for you. It'll be in the article on thefalcoholic.com as well if you want to get into it in the comments on that one. But yeah, before we dive in, let me real quick bring you a word from our sponsor, BetOnline. Folks, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football from the preseason NFL. Again, warn you not to bet in the preseason. It's very, very, very dicey, true DGen behavior, but it's up to you. You got to figure out if that's good for you. You could also wait for college kickoff, which is happening very soon, as well as NFL kickoff, which will be just behind that. And folks, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. And if you think you know your stuff, you can get in on BetOnline's new winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, you can head on over to BetOnline's online casino, get in on that game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of their over 150 slots games. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website today and use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, and get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. So let's dive in. As you know, the Falcons are now 2 games into the preseason. We just got the 1 game left against the Jaguars coming up this week. I don't think we're going to see major changes based on this Jaguars game. It's probably a few spots, maybe 3 to 5 at most, that are kind of up for grabs. And we'll obviously get into those today. So we're going to go through the whole roster here. And I do want to make a quick note because the math is going to be kind of wonky in this roster because the team is going to have to carry DeMarco Hellams into final cuts in order to put him on short-term IR, which I believe that would be the plan for the team. It doesn't seem like DeMarco Hellams' injury is season-ending. That's good. It will make it a little dicier because, again, he's probably not healthy enough to play anytime soon, hopefully within the next couple months. But initially, they're probably going to need to put him on short-term IR. And for those that don't understand the rule, if you put someone on IR before final cuts, it's season-ending IR. Now, you can always do injury settlements and stuff like that, but that makes the player a free agent after an injury settlement. So, you risk them getting a better offer from someone else. If you wait until after final cuts, and then you have the opportunity to place someone on short-term IR, which is the newer thing that's been here for the last couple of years, where I believe they have to miss, a certain amount of weeks, and then after that they can start practicing, and then they can possibly come back at some point in the season. So that is what the team is likely to do. That means they're going to have to carry an extra safety, carry Hellams, and that could make roster math a little bit difficult elsewhere. But we'll get into all those details here on today's show. So that's why these numbers, especially this offensive number that I'm about to tell you, is going to seem a little low, right? So I'm having the Falcons starting with just 23 offensive players. That means there'll be 27 defensive players. So the reason for that we're going to get into, but basically the Falcons have to carry some extra defensive guys right now, and it'll even out a little bit more once guys are able to be moved around. But yeah, so quarterback, not really any meaningful changes here, right? Other than Michael Penix Jr. clearly being the quarterback 2 going into the regular season, to the point where he's just they've basically pulled him off the field. He's no longer going to be playing in the preseason. He did not play in week 2 either. So I personally disagree with that. I think he needs experience and reps. And, I do view the preseason as like a practice thing. It seems like Raheem Morris and this staff views it as an evaluation thing only. And maybe not only, I don't want to mischaracterize them, but I believe they view it as mostly for evaluation purposes. They've evaluated Penix. They don't need to see anything else. They're going to put him on the bench. I think preseason is very valuable practice time, especially for rookies, especially for quarterbacks, like number 2 quarterbacks that don't really get any other reps, like live game reps at all, unless there's a problem, right? So I personally disagree with that. Is it a big deal? Probably not. But, I don't like the thought process behind that. I think you should get your young quarterback as many reps as you can. But, they want to keep him safe. He does have an injury history, right? So, again, that's not a bad thing necessarily in a vacuum. I just personally have a little disagreement with it. But, we'll move on. The one that I think is really worth talking about is Taylor Heinicke, and is the team going to actually keep Taylor Heinicke? Because I think you watch that game against the Dolphins and you're like, wow, Taylor Heinicke looks like he doesn't want to be here. Now, he did look better against the Ravens, but I don't think his performance thus far has really inspired much confidence. Now, there's not really any cap savings to moving on from Heinicke. I mean, there's like $1 million in cap savings roughly. So there's a little bit, but you eat like over $3 million in dead cap. It's not really a worthwhile transaction unless you're going to bring in somebody else that you like better. So I do wonder if Heinicke could be released and if the Falcons like another quarterback that comes up on the waiver wire. We'll see. At this point, I'm still having Heinicke on the roster, but it's not as solidified as it would have been even a couple weeks ago. So going to running back, this one is a bit more interesting. Obviously, we haven't seen one snap from Bijan or Tyler Algier, and we will not, it seems like, during the preseason. But there is a pretty exciting battle occurring between Jace McClellan, the rookie, and Carlos Washington Jr., who's the second-year UDFA. Washington seemed to have the advantage in camp. I think the first game was pretty bad for both guys. But the Ravens game, I think they both had better games. So it's still close, really. I think, obviously McClellan got the touchdown last week. It was towards the end of the game, so you're playing against the deeper reserves. But, I think given McClellan's status as a draft pick, he's probably going to have the edge if it's close like it is now. But it wouldn't shock me if the Falcons go for Carlos Washington Jr. I think both are going to end up here. Like, Carlos is probably going to end up on the practice squad if McClellan makes the roster. So, we'll see what the team ends up doing. But I think one of those guys is making it. One of them is going down to the squad. And then Avery Williams, again, he basically has been held out. I think he's just one of their core special teams guys, and they're going to basically, they're going to keep him for special teams, and that's fine. Moving on to tight end. This one seems to be pretty much solidified. We didn't see any of Kyle Pitts. We didn't see Charlie Werner. Ross Dwelley played 8 snaps against the Dolphins, and then he was benched for the second game. So I think these 3 tight ends are your 3 tight ends. Kyle Pitts, Charlie Werner, Ross Dwelley. These guys are the 3 tight ends that you're going to get. So, John Fitzpatrick, I think, has had a solid preseason. I don't think he's had enough to push ahead of Ross Dwelley. So he's probably your practice squad tight end. I think Austin Stogner also has a shot at the practice squad too. So that's probably more of the intrigue at tight end, is like which tight end or maybe both end up making the practice squad. But this one is probably one of the most solidified 3 tight ends that you're going to get on this roster. Like this one's pretty much set in stone. So wide receiver, have the Falcons keeping 6, which is pretty standard, right? And again, the top 5 seem to be pretty much set in stone because none of them have played. Other than the top 3 especially, like, have not played, and then the last 3 we have seen play some, but Kadero Hodge in particular, in terms of the lower guys, he was not playing against the Ravens, which suggests that his spot is safe. So Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, and Kadero Hodge probably all roster locks. Casey Washington, I think, is basically a roster lock as well. He had a strong game 1. Didn't have as strong of a game 2 against the Ravens, but I think a lot of those passes were pretty much airmailed by Heineke. It was a tough spot. And then the one guy I think that has really benefited from the preseason is Chris Blair. With the Falcons losing Rondale Moore, then losing Rondale Moore's replacement, Jakeem Grant, like after a couple days. It seems like Chris Blair has just taken advantage of that situation. Blair now, I think, leads the Falcons with 136 receiving yards on 6 catches through the first 2 preseason games. He's bounced back. He had a fumble on like his first catch, which was really rough. But he bounced back. He had a big gain after that in that game, and then was basically the top receiver against the Ravens. So I think Blair, he's got the size too to be a force on special teams. I think he kind of checks the boxes. I think Atlanta could still look around the veteran market if they're looking for someone with a bit more experience, to play that spot. But again, it's wide receiver 6, so maybe it's not a big deal. So yeah, I mean, I think they'll probably just stick with Blair. I think he's probably won this battle. But if they love somebody that gets cut, then obviously that could change. But I think at this stage, it's probably going to be Chris Blair. And then on the offensive line, we do trim this one down to 8 as a way of sort of saving a roster spot here for the defense, DeMarco Hellams essentially. So we trim off one of the depth guys. So it's going to be the main 8 that you're used to, right? It's going to be left tackle Jake Matthews, Bergeron at left guard, Drew Dahlman at center, Chris Lindstrom at right guard, and right tackle Caleb McGarry. And then the depth guys, the depth center is going to be Ryan Newsel. He was back against the Ravens, and that offensive line noticeably looked a lot better with him. So shout out to Newsflash. I think we're going to have Kyle Hinton at guard. The team does seem to really like him there. And then Storm Norton as your swing tackle. Kyle Hinton can also play a bit of guard in a pinch, or a bit of tackle in a pinch. He has done that in the past. So that's the 8 they're going to keep. And I think we could see them, after DeMarco Hellams is placed on IR, they could probably add another offensive lineman to this list, another tackle perhaps if they wanted to. But we'll see how they decide to divvy out those spots. So that is the offensive line. I think that one's pretty much settled, and that's the offense as a whole. Again, there's really only a couple spots here that I think are up for grabs, and that would be, running back 3, wide receiver 6, and then maybe offensive line number 9. And that's pretty much it. I think the rest of this group is pretty much settled. So we'll see how it shakes out if anything changes over the final game. Probably running back 3 is the one to really watch because that one might come down to the wire. But the rest of this offense pretty much settled at this point. Honestly, we haven't really seen much of these guys other than the depth, the really down the depth chart guys this preseason. We just really haven't seen them at all. So we'll get to see them in week 1, I guess. So now we're going to take a moment and head over to the defense. All right, on the defensive side of the ball, this one's going to be bigger, right? 27 guys on the defense right now because we're carrying an extra guy and because I think the Falcons are going to just carry an extra defensive lineman because of how stacked that group is. And we're starting off strong now with the edge group where the Falcons have a headlining addition in Matthew Judon via trade with the Patriots. Go check out our previous shows if you want more sort of information about Matthew Judon himself and his fit. But, look, the Falcons lost Braylon Trice after the first preseason game. That was a big blow to the depth. And the group was in sketchy shape before that happened. So that, add that to the mix, and it's pretty bad. So the Falcons obviously made a big move to replace Trice. They get Matthew Judon in here, which not only bolsters the edge group, but it adds like star power here. Judon's going to take over the top spot. He's a big boost to what was pretty much a below average at best group without him. I think he might take this group to average, like just by nature of him coming in, this group now might be average as a whole. So, that's a big addition. I think Judon is going to be huge for this team and being able to sort of spread out the pass rush, not make it entirely focused on blitzing or just interior pressure. So I love that addition. It's a huge one. And we'll just hope the rest of this group can sort of contribute meaningfully, right? Lorenzo Carter is a solid depth option. Zach Harrison's going to play inside, outside. Arnold Ebiketie, he had a bad preseason game against the Dolphins, but he was apparently lighting it up in practice. We've seen him be an effective pass rusher. So if he can be sort of that third down pass rush specialist, playing across from Matthew Judon, who's going to get all the attention. Maybe that is a situation where Ebiketie can have some success. And then I think the fifth guy for this group right now would be James Smith-Williams, who I think is just a solid veteran, not an impactful pass rusher necessarily, but a good run defender, a good depth guy. So I think James Smith-Williams is a good guy to have out there. With Judon coming in, it does sort of eliminate, I think, an opportunity for like a Damone Harris or a D'Angelo Malone to make the roster. Those guys are probably fighting for the practice squad now, but Judon coming in, honestly, you would just take that at this point. You accept that and be happy with that. So, then we go to the interior defensive line where I have the Falcons carrying a whopping 7. I mean, and if you count Zach Harrison as an interior guy, that would be 8. But yeah, I mean, I think this group, they're loading up here. They want to rotate. They want a massive amount of depth here. So at this point, obviously, I think the locks are probably Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata, Taquan Graham, Rook Ororo. Those are the 4 guys that I would think would be absolute locks at this stage. And then I think the next 3 guys are relatively safe. I think Kentavious Street, it's clear since he did not play this week, that they view him as like one of their core rotational guys, probably their top rotational like pass rushing interior guy. Eddie Goldman, I think, is going to be the nose tackle, so he's going to be out there. And again, Eddie Goldman may not be active every single week. They may kind of use him as like a guy that they want to have active for like heavy run teams and that sort of thing, where they need that extra beef out there. And Brandon Dorlus, I don't think they're going to cut Brandon Dorlus. I don't like Brandon Dorlus has had a fine training camp and a fine preseason, especially this last week. He had a big play in the game. So just the thing with Dorlus is like, I think he's in the process of bulking up for the interior. So that hurts him a little bit. It takes a little bit of time. And there's just so many guys ahead of him on the depth chart that I'm not sure that he's like better than those guys at this moment. But he's also your 4th round pick, and you're probably gonna. He hasn't been bad, so you're not gonna cut him. But he's probably gonna be like that, just basically every week inactive type guy. And eventually he's probably gonna get an opportunity right just over the course of the season, and we'll hope he does well, and then hope that he's a long-term contributor here. But at this point, I think he's kind of gonna be buried completely on the depth chart, given the guys ahead of him. And again, I want to shout out Taquan Graham. In my pre-training camp roster, I was like, man, I'm really worried about Taquan. Like, I wonder if he's going to stick with this new staff, if the team's going to sort of move on. I didn't have him on this initial roster, and now I seem like I was completely wrong, obviously, and he's basically the number 3 guy. Like, he was basically with the starters constantly. He's ahead of the rookies. He's ahead of Street. Like, he's basically that top that 3rd guy. So if they play 3 down linemen, he's probably going to be out there in that situation. So shout out to Taquan. I hope that he's back healthy this year and back in a defense that I think is a little bit better fit for his skills. So shout out again to Taquan for claiming that job and sticking on here. Good work there. And then at linebacker, this one is pretty much set. I think it's been set since J.D. Bertram was drafted, right? No real changes. J.D. Bertram, he didn't blow the doors off in his debut game. Had a stronger game against the Ravens. And I think the rest of this room is pretty rock solid. Like Caden Ellis, Troy Anderson, Nate Landman. Those 3 guys, you're very happy with that as your top linebackers. And then J.D. Bertrand as the primary depth guy. So they're going to probably just stick with the 4 linebackers for now, and we'll see how that sort of plays out. But I think that's where we're at right now. And then at corner, going to have them keeping 6 corners, pretty standard number. And again, we didn't see any of the top 6 corners, the guys that I have on this list, against the Ravens. They did not play any of the top 6 corners in this game. That suggests, obviously, that these guys are pretty much locked up in terms of their spots. Antonio Hamilton and Kevin King were both like 2 of the best players against the Dolphins. King obviously had that great interception. He had another near pick and had some pass breakups. Hamilton was just this absolute force against the run, just flying around. Looked like he was just completely outclassing everybody out there. I will say that former UDFA Natrone Brooks from last season, he was just the player of the game against the Ravens. He was crushing it. He was breaking up passes. He was busting up screens. He was it's going to be hard to leave Brooks off the roster, but at this point, unless they're keeping Brooks over Kevin King, probably not going to be able to have room for him, especially with the need to carry an extra safety right now. So we'll see. But I think Brooks probably going to have to go to the practice squad, even though it's painful because he's had arguably the best preseason of any of these depth corners. So, and that safety, like I said, they're going to keep DeMarco Hellams as like the fifth safety, but he's going to be put on short-term IR. But the big news here, obviously, is the addition of former All-Pro Justin Simmons to pair with Jesse Bates at the top. Huge addition, really turns this safety room, which obviously had Jesse Bates, but behind him it was pretty sketchy. So now you've got two Pro Bowls, like two All-Pro safeties starting. This is absolutely probably the second best overall position on the defense now. And in terms of just the starters, it's probably the best position. I think the interior defensive line probably the most deep and best overall. In terms of just the starters, I think it's safety now with Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons, two just phenomenal safeties. That is a huge addition that's going to, this defense is going to be really, really dangerous to throw the ball against just because you've got two ball hawking safeties back there, and Justin Simmons just I know the Falcons put out, a highlight reel of him, and it's just 8 minutes of interceptions. That's a lot of interceptions. This guy does not drop the football. He just knows where to be to get picks. And I think that's a crucial addition for this defense, which maybe overall, I think it looks a lot better now on paper than it did. But with this offense, if this offense is as dangerous as we hope it is, getting extra possessions for that offense could be crushing. You could just put teams away with that kind of stuff. So, we'll hope that turns out as good as we all hope, but that's a big one. Richie Grant moves down to that third safety. I think that's just a better fit for him. I think that's kind of what he is in the NFL, is a capable third safety, and hopefully he takes another step this year too, but you feel a lot better with him there. I will say, obviously DeMarco Hellams would be the fourth safety, or the third safety even if he was healthy. He's going to go to short-term IR more than likely. So the other safety that we're considering is probably going to be either Dane Cruikshank, who's more of that special teams ace, versus Micah Abernathy, who's a little bit more well-rounded. So Cruikshank didn't play against the Ravens, which sort of led me to believe that maybe he was a little bit safer. It seems like maybe he has an injury, not a serious one, but that one that held him out of the game. So maybe that's not a set in stone. So this one I think is a total toss-up between Dane Cruikshank and Micah Abernathy. Me personally probably slightly lean towards Abernathy, but I have Cruikshank on here right now, so I'm going to keep Cruikshank on here. Just because, again, if he's the fourth safety, they may care more about the special teams than the defensive play. And Cruikshank isn't a bad defensive player either. He's just mostly been a special teamer. So, we'll see. This is a tough one. The guy that loses this battle is going to go to the practice squad, though. So they'll stick around if they want to. Maybe they'll get a call from somebody else. But that is the defense, folks. 27 guys there. Then on special teams, no changes, right? It's going to be Younghoe Koo. I know he had the misses. You don't like to see that. He needs to kind of calm everyone down with a really good game against the Jaguars. That would be great. We got Bradley Pinion, who's very good. Had tremendous punting against the Ravens. I think he had over a 50-yard punt average. Good stuff there. And then Liam McCullough at long snapper. And then your returners are probably going to be Ray McLeod and Avery Williams. Those are the guys that are going to handle those duties. Jakeem Grant, after he got signed, it was maybe he'll factor in. But yeah, so long, Jakeem Grant. But yeah, I think at this point, that's your roster. There's a few guys like cornerback 6, safety 4, maybe edge 5 if D'Angelo Malone is really pushing with his special teams play, because D'Angelo Malone's probably been special teams MVP. So, maybe that's enough to get him in over someone like a James Smith-Williams. But I think those are really the only ones. And we'll see if there's any movement on the interior defensive line, but I feel like that group is there's just no room to squeeze anyone else in. And then real quick, go through my practice squad projection for all of you sickos. I promised it. Here it is. I think John Paddock, probably going to be that practice squad quarterback at this stage. Carlos Washington Jr. at running back. 2 wide receivers right now, Josh Ali and Jesse Matthews. 2 tight ends, John Fitzpatrick and Austin Stogner. Offensive tackle, Julian Davenport. Center / guard Javon Gwynn as sort of that extra interior guy. Damone Harris and D'Angelo Malone as your edge rushers here on the practice squad. Zion Logue, the rookie, and LaCale London on the interior as your practice squad interior guys. Linebacker one is actually a really tough toss-up. I think you could go with either Milo Eifler or Donovan Mooten here. I think I have Mooten. But yeah, it's close. And then at corner, Natrone Brooks and Anthony Johnson, and then Micah Abernathy at safety. So yeah, that's the roster and practice squad. Let me know, guys, in the comments what your thoughts on this potential roster are. Where do you think the biggest changes could happen after that final preseason game? And how much do Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons boost Atlanta's defense? Because it's probably a lot, right? That's a significant one there. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning into Dirty Birds and Brews. Please like, subscribe, leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the Patreon and check out the channel memberships if you're interested in supporting the show. We are, of course, starting up our patron / supporter fantasy leagues, basically, where you get to play myself with Adnan in fantasy leagues over the course of the whole season. All of those tiers get access to the fantasy leagues. Just make sure you sign up within the next week or so, because we're going to be filling up the leagues. So once the leagues are full, it's, please get in soon if you want to do it. Is basically my answer. Just so it can help us plan, and make sure you fill out the Google form, which is on the Patreon, on the YouTube channel page, and on the Discord as well. And again, thank you guys so much for joining. I'm Kevin Knight, Falcoholic Kevin. We're getting real close to the regular season here. You could join us on Falcoholic Live Wednesday night, 8 p.m. with Joe Patrick joining us to discuss this last preseason game and discuss sort of the shaping up of this team heading into the season, which is now just a couple weeks away. And then, of course, we'll have our preseason watch party coming to you on Friday for that Jaguars game. It's gonna be really something. So make sure you're here for that one. But thanks, guys, so much for joining us here on Dirty Birds and Brews. I'm Kevin Knight once again. We'll see you next time on Dirty Birds and Brews at the Falcoholic Live. Until then, have a great day, folks.